Okay, this is take 2 of tools required. This is for switching a Farlex direct drive one-way or two-way check, whether Platewind or S-handle. The tools you need are small plier pliers, needle nose pliers. I happen to use a kind of a bent version of needle nose pliers, a loonie or a standard large screwdriver, a small standard screwdriver, and then possibly 2 equal height items, a ½ inch thick or more, and I'll explain how these are used in the video. And then if you're switching over an S handle, you'll need one additional item, which is a Phillips #1, and I like to put a piece of masking tape, or in my case I'm using blue painter's tape, just so I don't scratch the cage up at all where the screwdriver goes in. And that's it. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to switch over this Platewind. It actually goes fairly quick. You're going to start obviously by removing the spool. As noted before, this is a standard right-handed thread on the spool screw. The spool pulls off straight away. One thing to be mindful of, I use a Teflon washer inside the spool. Sometimes that'll stick to the cage here just because of the grease. Just make sure you don't lose that. It's there for a reason. Turn the reel over, lift the faceplate out. Of course, this in the case of a Platewind. When you take the Platewind, the faceplate off, remove this large gear, and in this case this was one set for a left-handed reel. Place it to the side, and then you can take the washers. If they don't come out with the stainless washer in the thrust bearing washer, or the actual thrust bearing itself, if they don't come out, just set them aside. Normally this one stays in place. If it doesn't, just remember the order. It's stainless washer, thrust washer, stainless washer. Or should I say thrust bearing. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take this small idle gear, and in this case of a left-hander, this idle gear is completely in idle. It's not engaged. And we're going to essentially swap this large gear here and this small gear to the drive on the faceplate. What I do is I just simply put my left index finger on the C-clip, and then I pinch it off with the small screwdriver, and then I take that out. And you want to do that because when I first did this, the C-clips, when they release, they have a tendency to shoot across the room. And then remove this idle gear, and you'll notice it's on a self-contained little boss. And this is where the sticks come in handy. Sometimes the center of this will just push right out so we can get the gear. And other times it doesn't. When it doesn't, I just take a Phillips screwdriver of some type, brace the gear between two hard surfaces, and then push. A little more noisy than I prefer. Now we've got these two separated. You can take the larger of the two gears and put it on here slide it, pinch it together, and just make sure it makes full contact with it. And you can put it back in place. And then what I like to do is I like to make sure, of course, those two gears are lined up, and they are. Well, let's start over where we left off. I had forgot about the needle nose pliers as a required tool. I'll go back and edit that. Anyhow, I'm now going to put the C-clip back on. I like to just hold it kind of with my thumb and or index finger, whichever is easier for you. Pinch either side of the post and the C-clip. Snap it in place. We'll make a good firm snap. You can see the gear is functional now. And then the next thing you want to do is take the small gear, slide it on, and line it up, and then pinch it down. You can see it's shouldered up now. And now we're in the downhill run. And of course, if you're at a point where you need to relube that, this would be the point to do that. Put the grease on the the first stainless washer. Install the thrust bearing, which is the red one. Put the other stainless washer on. Now these are all here for a reason. Make a little more sense if you saw how the multiplier worked, but they also are part of what makes the reel work, the thrust washer. Take your faceplate and start it on there. I like to hold this gear on. Sometimes it wants to slide off. The other thing you can do is just put some grease on there, and it'll usually hold it in place. Slide the faceplate on, and then I like to hold it up at this point, slide it in, and if it doesn't go in right away, sometimes you have to kind of give it a little twist and it'll drop into place. And there you have it. There's the changeover. And hold the whole assembly together, put the spool on, line it up, put the screw on, and tighten it down. And we have now gone from a left-hand wind, which is what we had before, to a right-hand one. Silent wind up, check on the outgo. The main thing to note on the difference on a two-way, it's the switchover is identical. What you see is a little less tension on the wind up and more tension on the check on the outgo on the switching over left to right on the two-way. The process is virtually identical for the S handle, with the exception that you're taking the faceplate mechanism out. There's 4 screws that hold it in the back, and I'll add that video later.